Today, we're going to visit Newport Beach, California, as we look inside the heart and mind of the Booty family story, one story at a time. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'm your host, and alongside me is my son, Austin Karcher, the co-host. Today, we'd like to welcome John David Booty as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, JD.
Ken and Austin, I appreciate you guys having me.
Well, thanks for coming on today. So to get us started, kind of give us a little bit about growing up, in your household and, Shreveport, Louisiana. Give us some of, tell us about your parents and, about your brothers.
Yeah, my mom and dad are the best. I was so fortunate to be raised in the household that I was. My dad was a pastor and a football coach. So we were in church, probably 4 or 5 times a week. And then anytime we were not in church, it seemed like we were on a ball field, whether that be baseball or football. And having 2 older brothers, being the third, I just kind of was pulled around in every direction and every game and every sport that they participated in. And, now I have my third son and he's doing the same thing with his older siblings. And then having my younger brother, of course, Jack, to have him kind of come alongside me. And Josh and Abram were both a little bit older than me and Jack, so they kind of had each other. And then me and Jack kind of had each other, just like Josh and Abram did. So it was a exciting time to be in the Booty household. Again, a lot of sports, a lot of fights, unfortunately, from time to time. But just a great time having 3 brothers and fantastic parents.
So growing up, what kind of, dreams or maybe heroes did you have?
Oh man. Well, I would say, my first hero was probably my dad. And then my second hero became my older brother, Josh.
Yeah.
When I was 8, he's graduating high school and of course getting drafted in the first round, by the Marlins. And I loved baseball. I liked football too, but I was really into baseball at that time. So, he was kind of my hero and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And, he ends up coming back to college and playing football and doing his thing. And football it came more naturally to me, as I got older. But as a kid, it was probably my dream to play Major League Baseball like my brother was, or some sort of professional sport. But that was really my dream from a very young age. Before I guess I even knew what sort of talent I was going to have, I really had that dream. And my dad always preached, dream big, dream big. So that's what I did. Never knowing I'd be able to fulfill that, but that was my dream as a young boy, just to play professional sports.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with your dad. And you just said he always talked about dreaming big. How did he go about teaching that or preaching that to you?
Well, he was always kind of forcing me to play up with the older kids and challenge myself and kind of step out of my comfort zone and do things that, maybe I wasn't quite ready for, mentally and physically, but I would get thrown into those situations and then realize I could handle it. I could hold my own. And that was kind of the way it started as a young kid. And then really just through conversation, sitting on the couch at night or on the back porch during a thunderstorm and just really kind of talking through life and our plans and what we want to do and how we can achieve them. That was something that took place, I would say, more often than not. And ended up in high school leaving early that we didn't anticipate, but I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but we talked about that even years before it ever even happened. That
Wow.
Was could be a possibility. And but again, that was never the plan. But that's where it started with him and I just having conversation after conversation on, kind of our goals and what you need to do on a daily basis to achieve those goals from a very young age.
Awesome. That's kind of, it's funny. It's funny you say that because it's like, that's kind of how we started this podcast. Is just, these are conversations that me and my dad have had, driving in the car, not that we're eloquent speakers or any of that, but it's just, it's sitting there, having heart to heart. Sometimes, we're happy and sometimes we're crying. So it's just I get that. I can see how just those conversations build over time, and you just build a love for that person. So
Yeah,
tell us a
no,
little.
man, we're still having those conversations today, just like I'm sure you and your dad are. So.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit. You talked about your brothers, but maybe how your relationships with each one of them was different.
Yeah, I would say with Josh, um, again, that was kind of my hero. He was the older one, played quarterback baseball, which is what I was doing. And I'd go up every summer, and I was the bat boy on his team, and they'd put me in the full uniform like I was one of the players, and just I thought I was so cool, right? At 12 years old. The funny thing is, I was like 6 feet tall already, so
Yeah, I remember that.
sometimes the fans would think I was an actual player, and of course I would play along with that. So that was a lot of fun. But then when I came out to USC, a lot of people don't know that Josh actually lived out here with me
Okay.
in Southern California during the complete time I was at SC. So to have him here and to spend those kind of crucial, I guess, early years of adulthood and on my own, and but still having a brother, and we played golf all the time in the off season. We were together as much as we possibly could. So we grew really tight, had a really special bond there for a long time, and still do. But now I'm married with kids, and of course that takes priority. With Abram, I would say we were closer growing up because we were closer in age than Josh and I. Um, and Abram sometimes could, he was a pesterer. He would try to get under your skin, and he did a very good job of that. But at the end of the day, we loved each other. We had tons of fun together. He was also big into more of the army and superhero guys and things like that, which I loved as a little kid and could participate with him in that. And then now Abram actually lives out here in Southern California with me, and he's really since my mom and dad are back in Louisiana, he's kind of taken over that grandparent role almost to my kids that my parents would have, and they just adore him and think the world of him and his family and love spending time with him. And we've really kind of, I guess, reconnected, and it's been wonderful having him out here and getting to spend time with him. And then little brother Jack, there's really nobody better in my eyes, on the planet than Jack. Um, we slept together till we were in high school. I was in high school. He's just my number one guy. I miss him. I haven't seen him in almost a year now.
Wow.
Wow.
He's down in Miami, so other side of the country here, but we still talk and text almost daily. He's the guy that I go to. Really, if I have any news, whether good or bad, he's really probably the first person to find out about it, and then if not my dad. But Jack is a special man with a great heart, who also loves my family, and my family looks up to him and adores him as well. So he's got a special place in my heart. But we're all once we're all back together in the same room, we're right back into the insults and dogging each other and laughing, and
Of course, yeah.
like we never stopped. But I think at the end of the day, we've all got each other's back and would be the first ones there if there was ever a problem. And just fortunate to have that in my life.
Awesome.
JD, I know that our listeners have heard the name, but let's talk Evangel football now for a minute. And what, in your mind, what made Evangel football special?
Well, I think our coaches, to start with, we had a great group of coaches that were really innovative and maybe a little ahead of their time, as you're aware of, Ken. But we were throwing the ball when 40, 50 times a game when nobody else was doing that in the entire country. It started with Josh, but I think we, and with the innovation of the 9-yard shotgun
Yes.
that we were running because we really didn't have any O linemen, but we did have some skill guys. So, we figured if we could just get the ball back to the quarterback and him take a 3 or 5 step drop, we had enough time to run our routes and hopefully get open. And I think we had great players. I mean, you have the USA Today Player of the Year in Josh, the USA Today Player of the Year in Brock. I might have been the USA Today Player of the Year had I been there my senior year. And you had tons of D1 talent across the board, and it got more and more as the program went on. So, the players were a big part of it, to have that kind of caliber players. But again, to have the coaching staff, to be ahead of the game was a huge part of it early on. And then they just kept that innovation going, along with now throwing in all these D1 players. And that's what made us, I think, so elite.
What would you say, looking back, was your greatest high school accomplishment? And then you already mentioned, which we're going to go right into, you only were there 2 years.
Yeah. My greatest high school accomplishment, I would have to say probably as a team, my sophomore year. We went into, I think it was the third or fourth game of the season. We were playing West Monroe, who was at that time, they were top 5 in the country. And we were playing them at Independence Stadium there in Shreveport, where they host the Independence Bowl and a lot of college games. I think the attendance was 45,000, somewhere in there.
Wow.
So we got more than the Independence Bowl that year, but it was a huge kind of talked about game leading into it. We were undefeated. They were undefeated. We were top 5 too. And they absolutely spanked our tails up and down the field for 4 quarters. I don't remember what the final score was, but 37-12 or something. I mean, it was pretty big blowout. And I just remember after that thinking, I didn't think it was going to be this hard. This was crazy. I mean, we just got beat up. Everybody across the board ended up getting hurt in the fourth quarter and not even finishing the game. But then to come back after that and finish the season strong and make it through the playoffs, and we get to play them again in the state championship game in front of another 40,000 people in the Superdome in New Orleans. And to throw a touchdown, I remember the route like yesterday on a corner route, just over the corner's head before the safety got over there right at the pylon, with maybe like a minute left in the game to really win the game and seal it. And that's probably the best moment that I have in high school, was just kind of that redemption game to come back, especially when I didn't play very well against them the first time, and then to do it and win the state championship. That was a special moment for me.
Awesome.
Now, again, what you mentioned, you're there 2 years. This is the time I think your dad's transitioning between Evangel, Calvary, that whole thing. Can you sort of tie that all together? It's a 2 years in high school, and then you go to SC. So walk us into that transition, and then talk a little bit about your time at SC.
Yeah. So, my dad was the head coach my sophomore year, and I believe my dad, or my sophomore or junior year, I can't even remember. That's so funny. Maybe both. But anyway, they were transitioning him out of being the head coach back to just being the quarterback coach. And, us and a lot of the players and the vocal players and leaders on the team were really not too thrilled about that. They wanted my dad to stay the head coach and whatnot. And, they ended up, again, putting my dad back to just being a position coach. And I was like, well, I don't know, how I feel about that. And then they ended up, a few weeks later, they were going to let him go altogether.
Wow.
And kind of, not even be a coach. And at that point, I had just gotten back from coming out to USC for spring ball. And I verbally committed to Coach Carroll and to go to USC at that time. And I go back home, and all this is taking place, and they let my dad go, and I'm like, I don't know where else I'm going to go. That's going to have the level of level of talent and also offense where they throw it like this. Nowhere in Louisiana Could I have made a, quick, easy move over to a different school and, it'd been seamless. And so I called Coach Carroll and said, Coach Carroll, I think I might want to try to come early. And I said, but they just let my dad go. Still trying to figure out how this is going to work out, but just wanted to put that thought, in your head. And I said, well, just think about it, and we'll touch base here in a couple days. And a few days go by, and a lot of the players again were outspoken. One of my dad, well, they said, okay, we'll let Johnny stay. The head of the school said, we'll let Johnny stay, finish out, this senior year, and then, we'll go our separate ways. Well, about a few days later, after that, I get another call from my dad, and he goes, well, they let me go again. And so now for the second time. So I said, all right, that's enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. Picked up the phone, called Coach Carroll, said, I want to come for sure early, year early. Is that even doable? And he goes, let me call you back. And hung up the phone, and maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, my phone rings, pick it up. He goes, you're in luck. We have one scholarship left. Get out here as soon as you can. And that's really how it happened. I still had a few classes that I had to finish that I was planning on taking my senior year that I jumped into as soon as I could in summer school, knocked that out. And then I was out here doing all the football drills and workouts in summer, trying to learn a playbook, in a few weeks before we go to camp. So, I really, I guess, getting to SC, talent wise, I was definitely ready. Maybe from a throwing standpoint, from a physical standpoint, I was about 175 pounds. I'm not quite sure I was ready physically for it. And then as you guys know, it went from, high school and middle school and elementary system that I'd been in for my whole life and knew, like the back of my hand, to now I've got this West Coast offense and different things. I mean, long verbiage, and trying to learn this in a short amount of time before I'm going into camp. So, looking back, I was up for the challenge and thought I was ready. I probably wasn't quite ready for that, but went into camp. I was playing my butt off in camp early on. Me and Leinert, who you all know, were really competing for the job. The other guys weren't even really in the conversation anymore. And about halfway through camp, my back goes out. And at that point, it was over. It was too late. They had to get ready. We were opening up at Auburn. They were the number one team in the country. Was our home opener. So there was just no way in the world they, could really, give me much shot after that. And they still kept me as number two, though. I didn't redshirt. I played quite a bit, that freshman year. Leinert played great, of course, before he became, ultimately who he was and the Heisman Trophy winner and whatnot. But, the fact that I was playing as a true freshman who should have still been in high school, I think is pretty remarkable. But again, I wish I would have paid a little more attention or given more attention to the weight room when I was in high school before I'd gotten there. But that wasn't that big of a thing back then,
Nope.
And but SC was the best time of my life. I'm so glad that's where I chose to go to school. Coach Carroll, I just think the absolute world of him as a coach and a man, and really learned a lot about the game and myself and competing with some of the best coaches and talent, in the country. So I was very fortunate and timed it just right. I was thinking about going to Miami and these other schools, and as soon as I would have gotten there, they started to go the other way, and SC just comes roaring. I had no idea the success that we would have, but to be a part of that was something really special.
Now, I know you're being humble there, but Leinart had that 3 great years and a Heisman, but I think you had 2 pretty good years yourself. And I think you won Rose Bowl twice, Rose Bowl MVP, and had a heck of a career. And then I think you get a chance to go in the NFL for a little bit. Is that right?
That is correct. So I was there, almost 4 years in the NFL. I never really got much of an opportunity. I did play in the preseason. Did okay early on. I would say my last stop was with the Houston Texans, where I thought I actually played really, really well, and thought that I was going to be there, for a little bit of time. Ultimately, I was not. But in the league, it's so much about timing and being in the right place. And unfortunately, that just wasn't in the cards for me. I was really in my second year. I mean, I had a great OTAs, was really kind of in discussion now, maybe not from the outside, but just internally with the coaches on, you may have a shot at this. It was me and Tavares Jackson at the time. He's since passed away, but it was he and I were competing, and he was kind of the returning starter and had the experience, but they weren't sold on him. And I was kind of the young guy from SC in the same system, and it fit me pretty well. But as we were going into training camp that year, we started getting wind that Brett Favre is coming. And, of course, for any quarterback, it's great adding Favre to your team. But for me, I'm like, man, that's not good. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And it was in my year 2, and I was the only QB left in the room who had didn't have any guaranteed money owed to them. And so I hung out there for a little while. They kept me on. They put me on practice squad, but were still paying me, as though I was on the 53. So I was there for a little bit until the Tennessee Titans called for me. But that was really, I felt like, was probably the best opportunity that I was about to have. That just it never happened. And you're there. Favre never misses a game. So even if you're the backup,
Right.
The odds are not that you're going to get in the game. So it just spending that time with Favre was great. He was terrific. I loved it. Learned a ton, but it wasn't going to happen there, and I could see that clearly. So moved on to Tennessee with Vince Young and Kerry Collins were the other 2 QBs there at that time. So had a great time with those guys and learning with Coach Fisher, also an SC guy. Really thought the world of him, and then ended up in Houston with Coach Kubiak. And when I got to Houston, it was really the first time I had my coach was an NFL quarterback.
Right.
And I learned so much, in that year that I was there, than I learned, at least since SC, in a short amount of time. And he made things so easy and so, QB friendly with answers and hot routes and your progressions. And I mean, it was like, a breath of fresh air to me compared to the 2 stops I had before. Just that, it was fine, but they made the QB position hard, which you see a lot of these, young quarterbacks in the NFL, and it looks really hard. And it comes back to what I was saying about being in the right system at the right time. And coaches that simplify it and make it easy for these guys the best they can. And that was the best professional experience that I had. Just having a great quarterback. My coach was Greg Knapp, sorry, who's also since passed away. But just terrific coaches. Matt Schaub was the other quarterback in the room, and Dan Orlovsky. So really, really sharp minds, great guys to work with. But that was really where I started to blossom as a quarterback. And then after that season there, was looking for work, about to have my first kid. And that was really the end of the road for me playing. I never really got much of an opportunity. Had some teams wanted to put me on practice squad, But I honestly, I felt that I was better than a practice squad player. Um, and just wasn't wanting to go at that time too. You weren't making a ton of money on practice
Right.
squad.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can go, back out to Southern California and get a job out there making more than I'm going to make doing this. But I realized you're not staying in the game and getting to play football, but now I've got a wife and a kid to provide for and look after too. So that was a hard decision for me to kind of, walk away. But again, not many people were calling, so it made it a little easier.
Austin, why don't you transition them to after football here?
Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about your family. Obviously, you mentioned your wife. How'd you meet her, and then how many kids do you have, and tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, I would love to. My wife, Jill, we've been married, it'll be 15 years in July. We have three beautiful children. My daughter, Bryn, is 13. I have a 10-year-old son, Nash, and a 5-year-old son, Levi. And we just added a dog to the craziness. So it's wild around here right now. But me and my wife actually met at a wedding, believe it or not. My best friend and roommate married her best friend from high school.
Okay.
So Ryan Khalil, who was my center and roommate,
Yeah.
who's eligible for the Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
NFL Hall of Fame coming up this year. Just a great teammate, player, and friend. They married, and that's how we met. Was at their wedding. She had been to SC a bunch, didn't go there, but we just never crossed paths until till the wedding day. And I saw her across the room, and my mom and dad were there, and I said, "That's going to be my wife." And man, it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe a year and a half later, we were getting married. So it's been a fun ride. My daughter's big into competitive cheer, so they're traveling all the time doing that. That's a pretty nonstop sport, man. They go and travel. It's
All year.
wild. For cheer, never stops. And then my 10-year-old Nash, he's really taken to quarterback. I think he's got the talent. He's a great little player, loves the game, just trying to figure it out. And now I'm starting all over with what my dad did with me, with him, and just talking through those dreams and what he wants to do and how he can go about it. And even now I went further than my dad, so hopefully Nash will go further than I did. But having just a ton of fun with that. My little one Levi, like I said, he's just getting pulled around to all these sporting events, but he's really taken to baseball. He's playing baseball this year, loves it. Just got through with his first flag football season and loves it, but still at an age, not quite sure what his talent is actually going to be yet. He can hit a ball, which is pretty impressive, but
Yeah.
on the football side, I don't know. But I'm coaching my 10-year-old, just having a blast doing that, working with him and his buddies, and I love what I'm doing right now.
Awesome.
JD, if you would, I know you go into business. Share a little bit about your start into business, and then I think, and I hope you'll share. You have a pretty interesting health story that sort of scares you along the way, and yet you see your faith come out in the midst of that. So, could you sort of share that story with our listeners, please?
Yeah. So after football, and I mentioned about to have the kid, I went back home to Louisiana. I hadn't been home in a decade, so it was close to Houston where I just finished up and go home. My parents had a big place, me and my wife could stay at, and I could continue to try to maybe go do some tryouts and different things if need be. So we landed there, and again, no team called. So Jill and I finally moved out of there and got our own place, and I'm, couldn't believe it. I'm back in Shreveport. That was never part of the plan. But anyway, there I was, and now I've got to figure out what am I going to do. I kind of getting ahead of myself, but I always knew I wanted to be in real estate. Just didn't know to what capacity, whether that be a developer, a broker, an agent, an investor. Didn't know. But at that time in 2010, the market was not really good. Was not a great time to be getting into real estate unless you had a lot of liquidity and could buy distressed assets. So I'm like, man, what am I going to do? Well, in Louisiana at that time, the oil and gas industry was booming with the natural gas and the Haynesville Shale. So I had some buddies from high school who had started a local, kind of oil and gas service company and asked me if I could come over and be a part of that and really just kind of, take clients golfing. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's a great fit for me, little did I know within, a year from that point that I'd be, really kind of head of operations and really kind of running the company from our corporate office in Louisiana. We had over 400 employees, 4 offices. I mean, it blew up overnight. There was so much work. So that's what I was doing. And I realized again, pretty quickly into that, I don't think this is really what I want to do long term, in the oil and gas. So it was about 2013. And I was like, if, things are starting to get a little better in the real estate world, if I'm ever going to try to make this move, it's probably now. And that's when I came out, had some meetings, ended up joining up with a group who I worked for almost 10 years. And we had a lot of success. But that's really what's happened in my, I guess, business life. But back in 2013, right before we moved and before I had our second child, I found myself in the ER twice in one day. Just felt terrible, didn't know what was going on, symptoms unlike anything I'd ever had before. Really all kind of neurological and brain related, I would say. The only way I really know how to describe it was like my brain was just shutting off, like the computer was turning off. I was just kind of going to pass out, no strength. That's really what it felt like. Well, I get to the ER and, they run tests and, of course, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Go home. Well, a few hours later, again, I'm right back. Something's not fine. They didn't know what it was. Send me home again. And I spent the next probably 6-8 months just trying to figure out what's going on with me. Every day I'm miserable, spending majority of my time face down on the floor, in my bedroom. And they finally got me on some different medications and things that at least I was able to kind of get up and about around the house. I still was not, I'd go to work for an hour, come home. Really wasn't able to do a whole lot. But a little after that, I started to feel a little better, and I could function and do things, as I needed to, in business and in life. I didn't feel good all the time. And it was really cyclical too. So some days were okay. And I'd be like, oh, this is kind of like normal. And then I'd have a week that was really bad. And then 2 weeks that were good and weeks that were really bad. So this went on for, since 2013 until about 2022. That again, I was doctor after doctor, MRI, scan, everything, trying to figure out what is going on, and nothing. Everything looks great. All your test results look great. So after a while, you're kind of like, you kind of start believing them. Like, am I kind of going crazy here? What's the deal? And I went to see a world-renowned brain specialist that I got introduced to from a friend, mutual friend, and went to see him, and he did all of his tests and different things that he does. And he came back and he goes, I think I found, the problem. And this is, fantastic news to me, because again, I'd really lost all hope, to be quite honest. Like, this is going to be what it's like the rest of my life. And they tried to always, blame it on football and hits and this and that. And I kept telling them I was blessed. I got hit in the head, but not like a lot of these guys, right? And it's different for everybody, but I kept trying to tell them, no, that's not it. That's not it. And so anyway, he lays out kind of what he thinks is the problem. And he goes, I think you have some sort of infection. We need to run some more tests. I'm like, this is the first time I ever heard infection, Usually everybody wants to just say, well, you have anxiety, or you've got, something else, and, just throw a medication on it and it would just get worse, right? None of it ever helped. And looking back, it's because that was not my problem. But we ran some tests and it came back that I was severely toxic with mold.
Mm.
Um, and of course I'm going, well, where did I get mold? But it was a relief to know, and when you look up mold toxicity and the symptoms, and it all started to make sense, right? What it does to your limbic system and neurologically and inflammation in the body. And I mean, all of these things, your immune system, it just wreaks havoc. And, but I'm like, I don't know where this mold came from. And it was a few months after that, because I had some metal in my mouth that I'd gotten put in when I was 15 years old. I got some spacers put in my mouth to hold some two teeth apart, but on both sides, that just hereditary didn't come in until I turned 18 and I was supposed to get implants. Well, 18 came and went. I never got those implants. And now here I am 38 and I still have these metal pieces in. And so they're going, well, maybe, you don't have any metal toxicity, but a lot of people react, poorly to metal in their body. So it's probably best you get those, removed. So I said, yeah, that makes sense. It's time. So I go to a dentist. He doesn't know anything about my past, nothing. He's just there to take out my spacers and fit me, for a new device to keep them separated. And as soon as he cuts it off, he's going, huh, I hear him making funny noises like that, and I'm thinking, I wonder what he's found there. And he goes, have you ever tested positive for mold? And I was like, I sure have. What makes you say that? And he's like, well, I want you to know your teeth are covered in mold.
Oh my.
And I had 4 teeth that were completely covered in mold. That, I mean, I have pictures of it. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but it was down. You couldn't see it because my gums had grown kind of over the spacers, and so no dentist, when I get my teeth cleaned or anything, could ever see it. It was literally underneath it, and they got that off, cleaned it all out, got all the mold off, and it was about a month after that because that's where the first thing with mold is you got to remove yourself from the source.
Yeah.
So I could have moved houses, I could have done everything, and that's why it affected me so much more than a lot of people that are just exposed to it in an environment, is I could never get away from it. It was constantly in my body, right into my bloodstream, and into my brain since I was probably 16 years old.
Wow.
So it took a while for it really to impact my system until, I knew something was wrong, but it had been building up for a long time, would be my guess. But really, once we got that removed and started my treatment plan, was the first time that I really started to notice, improvements. Now they've been slow, but they're improvements. And it's, week after week, month after month, and now it's been 2 years. And I went, from probably 30% 2 years ago, maybe 25%, to now I'd say I'm probably 80, 85. So that's a huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
Again, I still spent a lot of time, in the afternoons. I'd go so hard in business and everything just to function properly. I'd come home and I was just, really wasn't there much for the family and the wife. Just because it was really hard. I didn't have the capacity anymore, to take, any more on than I did during the day. But you mentioned my faith, and that's one of the amazing things about my dad and our relationship, is not only is he my father, but, he's my pastor. And to have somebody that I'm that close to and really can open up. I mean, he knows every detail about my life. Sometimes I probably tell him too much. But to have that relationship with him and to have him there believing with me and praying with me, and I really kind of gave my life back to Christ in 2019, even before I found out what was going on. because I was struggling. I was struggling so bad, and um, I was just not in a good place, physically, but also more importantly spiritually. And all this was just eating me alive. And like I mentioned, I'd become hopeless.
Yeah.
I was there were times I didn't want to keep going like this. It was miserable existence. And so gave my life to Christ and really got in the Word, got in prayer, got in worship. I mean, really 24/7. That was all that I was focused on. Again, outside of work or the kids' games or something like that. I mean, every opportunity I had the Bible open. I was, had scriptures written all over my bathroom mirror, in my car, all over my computer at work, on my bulletin board at work. I mean, everywhere. There were quotes about renewing your mind and about healing and all of those things. And that's really when, even though I was struggling, physically, spiritually, it's when everything changed for me. And, I was not a victim anymore, right? I was
Yeah.
always, poor JD, poor, this sucks, and then that whole mentality of, by stripes we are healed. And just going through all of those on a daily basis, just changing my perspective and how I viewed it, really, I think, changed the course of my life and brings me to where I am today. But without the faith piece and my dad, my mom's a part of that too, but without them there for me and helping me through that time, I'm not sure I would have gotten through it. And not as much as my wife was there for me, and she's been a huge help. Again, really raising these kids a lot when they were young, almost on her own sometimes. She's a special gal, and she's one of the reasons I'm here. But on the spiritual side, having the relationship with my dad and his knowledge of the Word, has really gotten me to where I am today. And I'm so fortunate to have, the people around me that I have, but also to have finally found out what it was that was causing all of these issues that
Amen.
troubled me for so long. And we prayed. We prayed. Can't tell you how many nights I would just cry out, and my parents too, is like, just show us what is this, like, so we can treat it or, can do something for it, because nobody seems to know what's going on. And all of that got revealed. It wasn't necessarily as early as I would have hoped it would have been. But now looking back, it was in the right time. I was doing a lot of stuff, spiritually and growing spiritually. Had I just been healed or, started to get better before I really even dove deep into the Word, I wouldn't be where I am today spiritually. So, it all happens for a reason, and God knows exactly what He's doing. Again, I'm sure Joseph didn't want to be in prison for 12 years either. But there's reasons for all of those things that are, even beyond what we understand at the moment. But I'm so optimistic now and looking forward to the future and what God has in store for my life and business and my family. So I'm just, I went from hopeless to completely optimistic and excited about what's to come.
Well, JD, I know you got to get going here. We always end this, give you this opportunity. Appreciate you being on. But one last final thing, and we give you a chance to give final words to, and you can do it collectively or individually, to your dad, Josh, Abram, and Jack. Anything you want to say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do it collectively, I think. Just, especially for my brothers, and they know I love them, but, how much I wish we could spend more time together. And sometimes I blame myself for that. Life gets busy, and it does for all of us. But, they mean more to me than anything else. Sometimes my wife even's like, babe, you need to get more friends. And I'm like, why? I got 3 of the best, right? Like, how many friends does a guy need? And they really are that to me and mean more to me than anything in the world. And I'm just happy to call them my brothers and fortunate to call them my brothers.
Austin, final words, and I'll close us.
Well, I know you got to go, JD, but thank you so much. I mean, there's so much, in your story that connected with me, I had very similar things. So I just thank you for your time. And it was truly a blessing. And just, your faithfulness as you walk through that uncertainty and that hopelessness and then God showing up. I mean, it's truly a blessing to hear your story. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
JD,
I really appreciate you guys, and I know my story's pretty wild and maybe bounced all over the place, but thank you for letting me share it.
JD, again, we thank you, and I look forward to talking to you more in the future and keeping up with you. But we want to encourage our listeners to join us as we continue to look inside the heart and mind of the Booty family story, one story at a time. Let me interrupt you for a moment. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to do this podcast with my son, Austin. For the last 10 years, Austin and I have had many intimate conversations on his drive home from work. Some of these father-son conversations have been lighthearted, while others have been very deep and emotional. Over the Christmas holidays, we decided to start a podcast called Awaken Kingdom Culture, where we invite our friends to share their life-changing stories with you, our listeners. This podcast is done under our nonprofit, The Win Awakening, a sports ministry network for coaches, athletes, and those who lead. Our vision is to awaken hearts and minds, one story at a time. Our mission is to encourage coaches and athletes and those who lead to live from a place of victory, regardless of success, records, or the scoreboard. Our goal is to create safe environments where transparency and vulnerability are accepted, and value and worth are recognized in an atmosphere of love. Right in the middle of your mess, I'm reminded daily that the most important person of my day is the one in front of me, and that one matters, and that you are the one. WinAwakening.org is our website. I encourage you to visit our website where you can encounter the good news of who you are in Christ and what you already possess and how to live from it. There you'll find blogs, videos, Andrew's journal, and this podcast, Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. I'm thankful for all of you who have given and are a member of Team Win. Awaken Kingdom Culture is listener supported. And if you'd like to support us, you can go to winawakening.org. We are a nonprofit. I encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And please like, share, and write a review on Spotify or YouTube. Okay, it's time to get back to the podcast. Today, we're going to visit Miami, Florida, as we look inside the heart and mind of the Booty family story, one story at a time. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host. Alongside me is my son, Austin Karcher, the co-host. And today, would like to welcome Jack Booty as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, Jack.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So Jack, start us off today and tell us a little bit about growing up in the Booty household, and maybe a little bit about your brothers, your dad, your mom, and just what it was like.
Well, it was super competitive, I can tell you that. Being the youngest of all boys, always competing, always in the backyard, whether it was pickup games or wiffle ball or video games, it didn't matter. It was always a competition, but it was healthy competition, right? And we enjoyed it. And nothing like being the youngest and having three older brothers that we were all super close. Obviously, my dad and mom are amazing people, as you guys know. So grew up in a great household and a great environment, especially for sports and growing us up to be ready for that.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about maybe some of your dreams or, maybe heroes growing up.
Well, still to this day, it's Tom Brady. Watching him, I don't think I missed a game of his whole career.
So you're a Patriots fan. All you guys are Patriots fans except, who is it, Abram? He's the Cowboys guy?
Abram is a secret. He's a closet Patriots fan. He doesn't want to admit it. He likes to, go back and forth with us, but I know he respects what they did and being a coach as well, part of his life and the accomplishments and how many championships and what they had to go through was amazing. But yeah, I grew up watching I never missed a game on Sunday watching Brady play and a little bit depressed when I saw him retire. I mean, I shed a couple of tears, I think.
Absolutely. So, are you upset about? Are you glad about the Patriots change recently, or are you upset about it?
Obviously, I was a Bill fan, but after watching the Dynasty and getting to hear that story and craft what they did, I mean, what they put together over so many years is so hard to do. And then you start putting the egos. Obviously, it's hard to make last that long and how successful they were. But they did an amazing job for so long. So it's sad to see Bill walk away, but I think they needed a change at this time. So we'll see what happens with him. I don't think he's done just yet.
Yeah, I don't either. So tell us a little bit about your relationship personally with your dad, and then also maybe, how he encouraged your dreams and how he impacted your faith.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, growing up, my dad in the city impacted so many people across the board. But every day, I grew up. I was a little smaller than other boys, so I had different kind of battles. And his encouragement as I went through my kind of career playing ball and sports was so crucial from what I had to kind of compare to the older brothers and how he kind of propelled me through that and helped me through that. And obviously raised up in a godly home and seeing that environment was so key to know for what I wanted for my future family and environment as well.
Awesome. Tell us about maybe more specifically, I know you mentioned your brothers, but kind of how you related with maybe each one of them.
Well, being the youngest, I think I'm connected to all of them in a unique way. I'm closer all around the board with all the brothers to have more in common, having to kind of fit in where I could just to be able to hang out with them, right? So whether that was playing golf with Josh or video games with Abram or just hanging with JD, we had to share a room growing up. So That's what he said. So we had to spend so much time together. So all around the board, I have a great relationship with all of them and a unique relationship. And I'm very fortunate to have, brothers that want to be so close and getting to see that and have them be kind of the ones that set the tone for having those kind of relationships and wanting to have that relationship with me was, looking back at it, not everybody has that opportunity. It's been, truly amazing to have brothers that wanted to have that kind of relationship with their younger brothers.
Yeah.
Hey, Jack, let me ask you, what's maybe a favorite memory you have with the brothers?
Whew, there's so many of them, obviously, and there's so many unique ones with each one. But I think, getting to spend time going to, the football games and watching them play. I mean, I don't get that feeling, even with Brady, like I mentioned earlier, how amazing it was. And I don't get that feeling with anybody. Being able to watch them play ball it's so special and it was so important, and I enjoyed every moment of it. So having those memories of being at the stadium or the ballpark or 80,000 people at Death Valley or with watching JD in the Rose Bowl, with all the brothers obviously being there and being able to celebrate those moments as a family. Not many people get those kind of opportunities in the sports world. So it was those are the best moments, and obviously just being around Thanksgiving and competing and talking trash and going back and forth. We do it in a healthy way, but we love my mom all the time. Got to go, boys, y'all got to stop nagging each other. Y'all got to, but we enjoy the back and forth and the banner. So we've had fun with it.
Well, now you're obviously the youngest one of them, and just by birth order alone, there's always those challenges of being the youngest. I'm the oldest in my family, so my younger brother, followed my two sisters and myself. But, I followed my dad, who had a great career of his own. So tell me, maybe what were some of the challenges of being the youngest and maybe the expectations or maybe even the expectancy that you you got to walk through because you were the youngest of such a successful family?
Yeah, as far as inside the household, like I said, the environment was so good. The brothers were super encouraging, loving, we always wanted each other to get better. Now, outside of that, you have Josh and Abram early on, and where we grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, they started building something amazing at Evangel. And as that success was brewing, they were the darlings of Northwest Louisiana, and it was exciting and fun. As the Evangel started kicking everybody's butt over so many years, just like the Patriots, the area started to turn a little bit and, wanted maybe Evangel to lose. And by the time JD was gone, we were beating everybody so bad.
Yeah.
So that environment of the city and support, I think, changed a lot compared. So there was a lot of pressure on that. And obviously I didn't have the size. Josh, two-sport athlete, 6'4", could throw it 75 yards and throw it 95 miles per hour. I was early on, sophomore year, 5'10", and so I was smaller. So I had to figure out ways from a skill set. So obviously, I was always getting compared. Oh, you're not going to be able to play at LSU, or you're not going to be able to play at USC. You don't have the size or the ability they had. So I had to learn how to play a different way. But I had to deal with all that. But that's going back to what my dad was able to do. Just talking about heart and competing and finding your way of winning and your talent. You're not going to, I used to sit there every night praying to God, dear Lord, give me 4 inches, please. That's all I'm asking. Something to help me out here so I can, get to that spot. But I had to figure out a unique way, but there's definitely pressure from that angle, around the area of what people, you had to hear or what other people had to say. And then it wasn't quite as a friendly environment if you went around to other schools and all that, because we've been winning for so long. So you had a different battle than the older boys did. And JD had to deal with a little of that, but Evangel was just so good at that time and winning. So they had such a good team. So it was.
Well, you kind of see like the Chiefs are walking through that right now. It's like everyone loved Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and now it's like everyone just wants anyone to beat them. So yeah, I understand that the transition.
If you watch The Dynasty, it's such a good show, kind of seeing the evolution of that. But if you watch it with Brady and them, when they beat the Rams, the greatest show on turf, everybody, they're the underdog. Everybody loved it. And then it turned really fast right after winning a while. So that's kind of how that switch happened in our little area of Louisiana.
Jack, let's transition, because a lot of people, other than the people in Shreveport area, probably don't even know this unless they've studied your family. Let's transition now. You're just talking about all this success Evangel's having, and your dad comes to you. I don't know how he did it, and all of a sudden we know that what goes on, and he's going to move to Calvary, and it's a startup program. What's going through your heart and mind when you get that news?
Tough. Didn't want to do it. Wanted no part of it. Begged my dad. I wanted to move at that point. JD was out at SC, and I wanted to go play maybe at the Modern Days or the Trinity League, or get out there and just get away from everything, because Evangel was so. I grew up, like I mentioned, going to every game, and it was so big when you were playing 5A state championship against West Monroe or playing the John Curtises, and it was so big. And now I had people there that were like father figures. I had friends there. That's where my whole life was. And then when things changed, all of a sudden those father figures, I didn't have that close relationship with anymore. Those friends, half of them did come with me to Calvary's, which was huge at that time to do a startup school. They didn't have much talent, but it was very difficult because I grew up dreaming to play in state championships for Evangel. And all of a sudden now my dad's telling me we got to go to Calvary, a school that didn't even have a high school program. So he takes me over there to do a walkthrough, and they have the middle school kids that we're about to be, hopefully we're going to keep for starting the high school, that are about to be freshmen or eighth graders. And I walked in there in their little weight room that was in a little tin can, not much there, and I looked around and I said, "This is a bunch of choir boys. I've seen a bunch of athletes my whole life. There's no way I'm doing this. I want to play high level football." And my dad says, "Trust me, have faith. We're going to turn this around. This will be an amazing program here soon." And I was very fortunate to have some close friends that were talented as well that helped kind of build the base of Calvary. But it was a battle. We had a good middle school squad when I first got there, a good team, because we did bring some kids that were in my grade coming over. But then we had to jump into being freshmen, the young bucks playing high school football, and we got abused and I had to play safety, a little bit of quarterback, and I'm 5'9", soaking wet as a freshman. And we're playing some pretty good teams, and I'm on kickoff as a safety man. Next thing you know, I got a guy running over my body, stiff arm, and I'm like, I'm not ready for this quite yet. I want to play quarterback, not kick off. You had to play all sorts of positions, so it was a battle. We got beat up pretty good all the way up until my junior year, as we had, the early eighth graders, seventh graders became juniors and sophomores, and then we started to put it together.
You're like, thanks, Dad. I really appreciate this here.
I can tell you there was times I didn't want to play football anymore. I definitely came back home. Going into my freshman year, we had a 7-on-7. I had to play quarterback. I was starting, and we were playing in the Louisiana big 7-on-7 competition that had all the best teams. And first game, first 4 balls were picks, and I came to my dad and I said, I don't want to play this game more. I stink. I'm done. He goes, son, it's early. Just keep staying on course, keep going down the path, and it'll work out for you. So his encouragement and he's gone through it so many times with so many different quarterbacks was, helpful in my journey as I was going.
Well, Jack, let me ask this real quick, Dad. But we talked to your dad, and he used the word revisioning with us, and just, being able to see something that other people don't see. Well, as you're transitioning to Calvary, I heard you use words like, faith and stuff like that as you're going into something you literally can't see. What do you think he saw in Calvary that maybe you didn't see at the time?
Obviously, they had the facilities. They had the location was a great location. And they had a good base, and they had good leaders that wanted to build something. They wanted to build something, right? You got to have that when you go into a program. It takes a team. It's all about the people around you. You can't do it on your own. And obviously, my dad is one of the best at building, programs at that stage. And you got to have the right people that want to have that vision, want to make something special, want to build something special. And Calvary had that with the leaders at that time, and Calvary's going on now to kind of take over the private school. What my dad built there and carried over. Obviously, when Doug came in too, did a great job. Doug Peterson, who's the head coach at Jacksonville now. Obviously, I had a good coach. I had a good opportunity, better than most, to build on that. So we had great leaders, great men of God, and wanted what's best for the kids, and really cared about the kids. So it obviously just fell into place with the opportunity and believing and trusting in what God was going to try to build at Calvary at the time.
Awesome.
Jack, I was going to interject when you said that you felt like giving up football. I transferred from Notre Dame to Tulane down in South Louisiana. In my first game, I was heralded as this star coming from Notre Dame. We're on national TV. I went 0 for 13 with 3 picks.
Wow.
So I know how you feel.
Your environment you're in was a little bit more intense than mine, for sure. So that's tough. That's a tough one.
I went home myself and said, I don't know if I like this game anymore. But only quarterbacks can. That's right. Only quarterbacks can relate to that. You're right, Jack. You already mentioned about the building of Calvary, but when someone's building a program, what did you think the keys were? And you sort of mentioned this, but what was your role in helping Calvary get to where it is now? It's a national powerhouse.
Yeah, I think my role at the time was, I kind of just followed in the footsteps of my dad and his faith and what he had going on, how he wanted to build this, and he was so confident in turning around. I know he was going to be able to, just what he's done and his reputation, obviously around the city and all of what they built at Evangel. But I think my role was building off of that with the kids in school when they get discouraged. There was a lot of kids when we were getting beat. I'm going to transfer over to Evangel, or I'm going to transfer to Airline. I don't want to be here anymore. And having to be that leader, like, hey, guys, we're going to get there. We're going to make this happen. We're going to go through a lot of tough times right now early on, but we're going to have a great team, as we get into our sophomore, junior, senior years. So, and recruiting, I had to do a lot of, out in the town and telling kids, hey, come play at Calvary. Come check it out, right? Yeah. Obviously, recruiting's frowned upon in Louisiana, but it was just, being around in the city or competing or playing. We played during the wintertime, 7-on-7 flag football games with your buddies, and kids from other schools would come. So you see good talent and say, hey, come play at Cal. We're going to build something special here. So it's maintaining the kids that were there and then building the kids and building a culture best we could of people that wanted to win and wanted to compete and wanted to get better. And we had a great group of that. I had a lot of good buddies, like I mentioned, that came from Evangel, that grew up from families that were at Evangel too, that saw what winning takes and what it was all about. So we all wanted that same goal, wanted to get there, and we worked together to do that.
What was your greatest accomplishment during that time in your eyes?
I think, obviously, going back to talking about Evangel, that was what I wanted personally. Maybe a chip, a little bit of beating them, wanting to get to them and take, because they were the best. It wasn't just that the chip; it was more so they were the best team in the city, and we
Yeah.
put in the work now. So I wanted to take that throne from them, hopefully, and lead. If we didn't win state, there was a lot of good teams in 2A at that time. You had the Curtises, St. James, and Evangel and us at that time, and a couple of other really good schools that from Hurricane Katrina that drove in some really good athletes. So it was going to be a tough battle to win the state championship, but I knew if we could beat Evangel, at least we're going to leave Calvary in a better spot, and people are going to start noticing Calvary a little bit more, and maybe being in the team of the city, and bringing in a lot of good kids. So that I would say. Beating Evangel was the biggest accomplishment, how fast we did it, for them being a team that not long before that was ranked number 1 in the country, right? And we're just a school that was a startup.
Well, everybody we talked to, all your brothers and your dad, all have mentioned you guys going and beating Evangel, and I think that speaks a lot to you. I mean, you have your brothers who have built this one program and have made it a national powerhouse, and then you in your own way and your own story has took something from nothing and then go beat that powerhouse. So I mean, that speaks a lot to your character and then the people in that program. So
I appreciate that. I think for them, it was probably one of the better games they watched. Obviously, watching JD in the Rose Bowl and doing that, they beat up on those teams pretty good in the Rose Bowl. So those are pretty cool games to watch. But that one had so much history, and I don't think anybody thought there was really a chance to do that in that short of a period of time. So when it did happen, it was such a great moment to share with my dad, knowing what we were going through and all the tears that he probably saw me coming home and broken up and thinking I couldn't do it. I wasn't good enough to make it happen. And then for him to see, I know that had to be a special moment because he built the whole thing, but I know he was probably hurting seeing through all the times that I was coming back discouraged, and he had to push me through that. Was pretty cool. And then we obviously had coaches that came from Evangel, and doing that with Doug was big because me and Doug I was his quarterback for 4 years, and he probably, when he's coming straight from Green Bay with Brett Favre and playing in the league and being in that environment, has to deal with me, barely getting it 45 yards down the field over there as an early freshman, and struggling. So to be able to go from there to see where we got a senior year and going through that experience with him too was pretty cool.
Well, we know like nowadays it's like, at least where culture is, everything's microwave success. And, there's no time for growth and development. And, I think it's stories like this that, really encourage people to have a vision, stick with the vision, go through the tears like you've talked about, stay focused and hold fast. And, there's stories. I mean, even Tom Brady, like we talked about, he was not the GOAT coming out of college, but he continued to grow and work towards, who he ended up being. And I think your dad's vision passed on to you, and just your resiliency, those tears made it even sweeter whenever you reached your goals.
It definitely did. It was an amazing experience, and being able to do that with your dad and be around him all the time. Not like I mentioned before, not many kids get that opportunity to spend that much time with their dad, and that was, looking back at it, that's the memories I really cherish more than beating Evangel or whatever. It was really building something with him and getting that he made the time and wanted to spend, time with all of us. He did it with all of us, which is amazing. The amount of effort and time and wanting to be with us is truly amazing.
Jack, you mentioned Coach Peterson, which a lot of people, probably think, is that the guy from Green Bay and Philadelphia and now the Jaguar? Yes, it is. How did he help you grow both as a person and a player?
I think early on it made me tougher. He came from an NFL environment, so he's obviously an amazing person. Doug's an amazing person, but he's coming from, you don't get too close with everybody. You got your position coaches and that, but you do your job and then it's on to the next, right? So early on it was, it was hard to kind of connect with with Doug coming straight from the NFL, and then he obviously softened up and realized, hey, we're just high school boys, right? We can't be treated like NFL guys. We're not there yet, and especially being a young team, and we had a long ways to go. He helped me from a skill set of, the knowledge he had in the football world. We grew up with a lot of knowledge, right? But from a schematic standpoint and a technical standpoint, playing the quarterback position and reading coverages and understanding, okay, you're rolling right where the ball is going to fly, or rolling left, or if you step up and throw off, in the bucket, you got to step in, throw the ball right correctly. There's so many things I learned from Doug. And all our guys did. He was unbelievable at coaching every position. So he could coach quarterbacks, he could coach receivers, he could coach O-line, because he's been in the game for so long, 14 years. And, at first it was a little intimidating. He came straight, I think it was mid-January he came in. My dad made the announcement, so he's going to come speak to the team. And it's probably the coldest day maybe in Shreveport history. It's like 22 degrees. And he's big and strong at this point. He's 6'5", and he's a strong-looking guy. And he came out in a T-shirt and shorts, and we're all bundled up, and we're like, what is this guy doing? This guy's nuts, right? So right when he came on board, he was a strong figure, a leader right away, and then being able to grow and get coached by him every day and spend that time with him and learn. Really, that's what elevated me in a major way, I think, to get to a spot, maybe not having that talent by the time of the senior year to really, really compete.
That's awesome. Well, I wrote this down because I know you'll appreciate this, and this will probably make you laugh too. Abram said something about you that was amazing to me. It's like I'm doing this with my son, Austin, means the world to me. And I know when you talk from one brother to another, and when a brother says something about you, I know it hits the heart. So we're talking to Abram the other night, and you came up and we're talking about the brothers, and he said this, okay? He said, Jack is probably the most fierce competitor I know, which I thought was huge.
The dad said that too.
Yeah, he said Jack may be the best pure high school quarterback that he's ever seen, willing his team to wins. That's from your brother. Now, here's the part you're going to chuckle a little bit. He said he's also probably the most handsome out of the four of us. He's a stud. He's Tom Cruise and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, he's lying. He's lying about that. Abram did a little modeling back in the day that he might not talk about much in New York City. So Abram, I might give the nod too on the best looking. But I think that came from me and Abram. We would battle it out and pick up game. Obviously, he was much older and could beat me pretty good if he wanted to. But we played anything we competed in, and we loved competing in video games. And I had to win. That's what I always wanted to do. That's just something that's always been in me. I think trying just to fit in with the older brothers and be able to compete with their friends when they came over was just something that was inside of me, just to be a part and be able to spend time with them. So I think that's where the competitiveness really came from. Because, like I mentioned, they were always super encouraging. But we did compete. But they wanted me to win. They wanted me to be better, and I think that played a huge part in having that inside of me and that competition.
Well, I think when brothers talk like that about each other, and what I've seen in your family, and I've still got Josh to do, but it's evident that the love you guys have for each other, or the respect you have for each other, both as people and as players, and I just like to share that with one another as brothers, because I think that's as great as encouragement you can get is from when it comes from your brother. And so that was great. But so now you've sort of led us up to your senior year. And again, a lot of people probably don't know, but I'd like you to share with us and our listeners, Jack, your post-high school story, because you've got some unique things. You're about the only guy I know, and correct me if I'm wrong when you start talking about this. I'd like you to talk about recruiting out of your senior year, and then you're contemplating coaching. You actually started a company, QB Consulting Company, in high school. So you have your own company while you're playing ball. And then I think right outside of when you decide not to play after high school, you end up becoming the coordinator right there, coaching right away. So walk us through how all that came about, Jack.
Yeah, I think at that time you got to understand, being 35 years old, there wasn't quarterbacks. It was the big quarterbacks, right? 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". Josh and I were talking about the other day. Even when he's coming out, he was a small quarterback compared to some
Yep.
of those guys that were playing. So Russell Wilson kind of changed that
Yeah.
around a little bit after I got done playing. So there really wasn't an opportunity to go the distance, which was going to be hard for me from a talent standpoint, anyways, to go play in the NFL. I was recruited. I grew up drawing plays and showing my dad, like, y'all use this at Evangel for the game. And I loved the schematics and scheming. So I got recruited smaller schools, D1 smaller schools that I had to make a decision. I grew up watching JD and Josh and Abram play in big stadiums. And I was like, if I can't play in those stadiums, maybe coaching is the right path for me.
Hmm.
So I started the quarterback consulting business my senior year. We had a lot of dads that had some younger kids at the program, and their kids obviously coming to the game looked up to the players, the football players. So I had 3 or 4 kids that started with that, ended up growing it to about 20 kids. And I was like, coaching is really what's going to be, I guess, my passion and what I think I want to do long term. So Doug was in kind of the transition period of maybe taking that level to go to college football, and he goes, "Hey, ULM wants to offer you, and there's a chance that in the next year or two I could be coaching there. And if you don't want to do that, which I think you should, at least give it a shot, then you could come coach with me right now, and then maybe work yourself up, go be a GA at ULM with me, and then we'll see what happens from there." So right away, I realized all the things I've learned from Doug, and coaching was a passion of mine. I said, hey, this is probably the best path I better take advantage of. Not many people have Doug Peterson to take advantage of and learn from, right? And obviously having that relationship too. I knew there was eventually something was gonna give, and he was gonna have a shot at a major level with all the knowledge he had. So I went down the coaching path, coached with him for a few years. He got the call from Andy Reid to go be quality control, but he knew he was going to be eventually the quarterback coach, but he had to go a year of quality control in Philadelphia. So when that happened, that was a discouraging moment for me, because I wanted to kind of work with him and go to college and start working myself up. And he said, hey, there's a chance, in a year I can give you a call once I kind of get in a position where I can make some decisions. Right now, I'm just kind of the low guy on the totem pole myself. And then at that point, I was like, I don't want to be in Louisiana anymore. I had JD. Josh was living out in California. So I went out to Newport Beach and had no clue what I was going to do. Had no opportunities at the moment. Got away from the coaching, quarterback consulting, left it all there. And I met an amazing guy that became a mentor of mine, Henry Davidson. And he really gave me an opportunity to be a partner with him in a company that we ended up growing. And we sold about 8 years later, and then I ended up getting into my next venture after that. But that was kind of my path of kind of going from coaching to then getting into the business world. And it worked that way. I thought I was going to be a coach, and that's what I really loved. And I actually did some coaching even a few years back with Abram. He needed someone to be an offensive coordinator for General on his sophomore year. And once I did that, I got so caught up in coaching and realizing that this might be a little too much to me. I'm too passionate about it. I mean, it consumed me. So I was like, maybe I don't, obviously what I'm doing now, I enjoy it, and it consumes me as well. But that coaching, just being around football again, it's a blast, but man, I eat it up.
Well, we'll get to your business stuff in a second, but I want to go back. If we were to grab one of those 20 young boys that you were working with as a QB, what would they tell us that they got from you, Jack?
I think it's what I learned from my dad, to be honest with you, and Doug, kind of just putting it together. And it's the importance of your feet early on, right? Learning how to control your body. I think everybody, that's what they would talk about, is that we worked on feet more than we threw the ball early on for these kids, because that's so important to get the good, have that base and be able to be in position to throw. So I think that's something they'd say. Our feet, we did 3, 5, 7 so many times. It's crazy.
That's all my dad always preached too. We're going to focus on the feet. So it's just funny hearing you say that.
The feet, for sure. And the game was changing at times. So you had to kind of learn that it started getting into the RPOs and everything was shotgun. And I had the ability, and I loved it. I enjoyed it. But with Doug, we worked underneath, play action, shotgun. We did everything. We were West Coast offense, so
Yeah.
there wasn't probably any high school team in the country at that time that was doing what we were doing. And you talk about play calls were like NFL play calls. So it took me 3 years
15
finally
words.
figured it out. Eventually, he kind of dumbed it down a little bit, but because we had some guys come in like, Doug, you got to calm this down. You got full scripts going on here. These are NFL guys. So I had a lot on my plate, but the game definitely started changing, and that was fun to try to adapt. And I wish I'd have had the RPOs and those kind of games for a smaller QB to be able to play compared to having to get under center and to do those kind of things being a smaller quarterback.
Yeah.
So, Jack, let's talk about your faith journey now at this point. Where are you at in your faith as you're finishing up your senior year? You're trying to figure out what to do, and then I'm going to transition in a minute to business. But
yeah, I think as far as the space side, there really wasn't after coaching. I didn't have any skill set, so there was discouragement trying to find what am I going to do now? Where am I going to get? So I had to really lean on God to show me the promise, what I needed to, where I needed to be, what was my opportunity now to do something, big or find the right spot for me and where I need to be living and life. And so it was trying, I was discouraged a lot. I had to go through a lot of people and jobs and not having many opportunities from having, some success for the last 3 or 4 years. So having just to stay, I guess, grounded in faith that God was going to provide and put me in the right spot.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When I look at the brothers, but when I look at your background, Jack, you have a true heart of an entrepreneur, I think. Again, you can correct me. But as we start talking about your business career, how has playing QB helped you in your business? And then I'd like you to walk us through some of your ventures. I know, I have Kettle Kingdom and your big dreams and Beulah we're here with today, if I said that correct. What the heart of an entrepreneur, how did QB play and help you?
I think it's very similar in a lot of ways. First of all, it's understanding how to work with a team. You can't do it on your own, especially coming with Beulah right now, what I'm trying to do from a tech space. I didn't come from a tech background, so I had to find the right people on the team that I could trust, count on to put this together. I think on the other angle, it's just like I mentioned, I had a lot of fear playing quarterback early on. And had to have that faith. So it's fear and faith on both sides of the chest, right? It's kind of overcome that every morning. I mean, you have the enemy trying to take that from you every morning. So I have to really get in the word early on and have that moment with God, knowing, hey, you have that promise for me. And we hear it all the time, but it's really something that sticks on my mind that I stick with is I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So when the enemy's telling me you're not good enough, you can't do this, when you're talking to big VCs that $1 million on the line or, big CEOs of companies, and you don't feel like you maybe belong there at this point, it's really the fear and faith on both sides of the chest. And you got to really, ground yourself in God and have you knowing that you can do anything if he's on your side, right? So It's that battle every day. I got to fight that battle every day. Even before phone calls or Zoom calls, you got to get on your talking, to 10 people wanting, let's hear what you got to say. There's always fear and doubt that you might not be ready to do that, or you might not be in a position to do it, but you just got to trust. And it's always getting back to trusting in God's promise for you and your purpose.
It's interesting you share that, because Austin and I are in the same position. I mean, I was a coach for 35 years and walked away from it to start a ministry to coaches, athletes, and people in leadership. And you're right. I'm sitting there every day saying, what am I doing? Does anyone even care? Am I crazy? So you're exactly right.
I still face it this day, and we've been doing Beulah for a while now, for about 4 years, getting close to coming up with 4 years. And, I know the insides and outs of it, but I still, even every day when I get onto a call or you have to raise money or go through this process, there's always the enemy in your ear telling you, hey, you're not going to be able to do this. So you got to fight that every day.
You mentioned a couple times, you used the word promise throughout this podcast, probably about 3, 4, maybe 5 times. What promises you talked about you can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. What other promises about God do you hang your hat on to help you work through that fear and faith?
Yeah, I think that's a really a great question. I mean, what other promise you hang your hat on? I think it's just staying rooted in all his teachings and what you got to do, and knowing that he has going back. You still go back to purpose and promise, knowing there's a real purpose. I always felt like in my life, and I don't know why, even though I have this fear, maybe more so than I feel like I deal with more than my brothers, is he has a greater purpose for me to make an impact for his kingdom, and I want to make an impact for my family, right? I want to be one that can really change kind of, maybe situations and opportunities that maybe we haven't faced yet. And it's going back to somewhat of the competition too, being able to do that and be able to, help, my mom and dad in any way I possibly can, be able to help others in any way possibly can. I think that's from a financial angle that I felt like my purpose is, and maybe it's not. I'm praying on that every day, trying to learn what God really has planned for me, but I feel strongly about that being a purpose I have.
Well, obviously this podcast is called Awaken Kingdom Culture, and you use the word kingdom. And we asked your dad a little bit about, what is a kingdom coach, or, what does kingdom culture look like? What does that mean to you?
Kingdom culture. I mean, that's a good question. Kingdom culture.
So like, you're a businessman, obviously. What does the kingdom look like in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, kingdom culture for me, I have something written down. So hopefully this answers your question. I'm trying to get to that point. Hopefully I'm on the same page as you. Kingdom culture is, I want the ability to eventually create with super successful Christians a fund, right, that supports missionaries across the globe in unique ways. And I want my dad to be a part of that too, right? So, and that fund isn't to make money, right? That fund's to go out to people that really, it's not to, and I think it's great. I'm not saying to build a little church somewhere. It's maybe people that are in really deep situations where we got to get people out that are Christians or missionaries doing work, right? That you can give them the financial support and help really make an impact on the kingdom with people that are really doing things that we don't hear about or really talk about, that are in some really dangerous situations. And when you hear some of these stories that people I've talked to of where they're going and life is on the line, that's a different kind of ball game, right? That's real faith. That's really believing and being able to help them, because they don't usually have the financial support and help that maybe they need to really get these things done to make an impact on these places.
Awesome.
I love your heart, Jack. I really love your heart. I tried to read up a little bit, but for our listeners, can you explain a little bit what your company is about, what you're trying to do, your most recent adventure?
Yeah, Bula is a pretty unique idea. It's pretty cool. It really comes from going back to childhood, competing, right? Whether I mentioned we playing video games or horse games or wiffle balls, it's challenging each other. So Bula is the first of its kind true social app where you can challenge your friends on anything and compete as short form video like TikTok or Venmo. And
really?
you play pickleball or golf games and for prizes, right? So if you want to challenge your buddy who can win in a time mile, or who can win in pickleball, or who's going to win on golf today, and record video and show off and brag and really add that element where your friends can follow. And then we're also working with competitive brands. A good example would be like the Nike Run Challenge, where we can integrate into their technology and they can host these social video challenges that comes to their platform. So they don't have to go to TikTok to promote things. They can bring people to their platform and host these challenges for prizes.
Awesome.
That's amazing. Wow.
Why is it called Beulah?
So Bula it means, growing up, I have a friend, AJ Smith, and I got to give him credit for this. He's actually the offensive coordinator right now for UFL for San Antonio. He's my best friend growing up. And we would challenge each other, and one of us didn't pay up or do what we were supposed to do on a dare or challenge. We would say Bula Bula, which kind of meant like BS in a way, right?
Oh, okay.
And so we simplified the word to Bula, and it actually has a great meaning. It's Fijian, that means wishing you life or wishing you luck, similar to aloha in like Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Hawaii, yeah.
I love it. Well, we're getting ready to come to a close, but what are some future dreams and goals you have that maybe you haven't shared with many people?
A future goal of mine is to get a lot better in golf. I'm struggling right now. I'm going out and playing with my brother and with a lot of these business guys, and I kind of embarrass myself. So that's definitely that's probably offshoot of what y'all thought I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's definitely that's one I'm going out this afternoon to try to work on my game as well. But I think it's getting what I have written on my book is to the investors and people that have believed in our dream and vision in Bula. It's crazy numbers, but to really 100x, 50x, or 25x what these people believed in us and build this company up into a global brand is all I focus on right now. As far as from a business standpoint, is to build Bula up and make it something special globally. And so that's really my focus, and that's my goal right now. And I tend to be like that, one track mind. When I get focused on something,
Yep.
I want to make it happen. So that's where my focus is right now, from goals and dreams to build this up and make it a global brand.
Awesome. Tell us a little, I know we've touched a little bit on this, but, in summary, I guess, what is the greatest impact that your dad has had on you as a father, first off, and then as a coach?
Yeah, so that's I mean, there's so many ways you can go with that, but the greatest impact he's made as a father, I think, is seeing, what an environment, a Christian environment, and a great environment is to be around. He always established a good environment, with the boys, and how much time he spent with us, and for my future family and where I want to be, and the commitment to every morning of what, getting into the word when I'm with them, or him giving me that a little message every morning. It's, seeing all that, that's such a big impact, especially even as I get older, not even when I was younger, but older. It's even more impactful because I'm not with them every day. I'm not around them as much, and I miss those moments I have. But when I'm discouraged or down, I know he's there praying for me every day. And I know that with his prayers, my mom and dad, and what they, the time they put in praying for all of us boys and all the grandkids, I know it's making a difference, and I feel that, right? And so I think that's the biggest impact I have when I think about my dad, is he doesn't miss those prayers for us every day, and I know it's there, right? And I know it's coming, and I know I'm under God's shield because what my dad is praying for and what I believe as well.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, we've asked each of the brothers this question, and you can do it either collectively or individually. What are your final words or thoughts to Josh, Abram, and JD, and then your dad?
Well, I don't want to forget my mom either in this thing.
No.
Yeah.
My mom, I know it's a story about my mom, the impact, the selflessness, how many meals she made. I was doing math on the other day, calculating how many meals growing up to 18 years old.
Wow.
How much time she put in the early morning 5 a.m. workouts to coming back at night after practice, and having everything ready, and all that she went through for all the boys to make sure we got to where we needed to be too, from athletic standpoint and spiritual standpoint, and standing by my dad in that process. But as far as, if you want me to give a kind of a thought on it, you want me to give a thought on each kind of job?
That's your call. You can do it either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the relationship with Josh, obviously he's a co-founder of Bula, so we have our relationship. It's all the time. We're very close. We spend so much time together. But I remember being a young boy, and Josh was playing in the major leagues early on. He went at 18, so I was young. I was like four or five. So when he'd come home for a week off or whatever he had, I remember how excited I was to see him and have my older brother around and spend time with him. I wanted to be around him and get every moment I could when he was in town. I used to beg my mom and dad not to make me go to school if I had school that day, just to be able to ride around the golf cart and when he played golf, and just spend every moment I could. And still, to this day, it's still like that. We enjoy spending every moment. So we're super close. Abram, we had such a great relationship. He helped coach me, early on, and spend that time. And then I coached with Abram, and General. I'm so close with General and his little girl Avery, and I've spent so much time with Abram that he's made such a big impact. And seeing how he has from a business perspective, he's a leader of men. He does an amazing job with anything he comes across. People want to follow Abram, and how he handles himself and approaches himself. And then JD I call him Steady Eddie. The guy is the most steady guy. If you even go watch film of him in the Rose Bowl, he throws a touchdown. He acts the same way if he throws an incompletion. The guy is so steady and so solid. He's a rock. And, having those different personalities between all of them, it really meshes into something special when we're all around.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Austin, final words to Jack, and then I'll close us.
Well, I'm, like I've said to all the brothers, but especially you, Jack, I've just so appreciative of your time and your vulnerability and your honesty and your story. I mean, I really appreciate your heart and, your business and what you're trying to do. And I can see your faith in the whole thing. So thank you.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to see, hear everybody, hear all the stories, and then obviously hear from my dad as well.
The one word I think of, Jack, when I think of you now that we've talked, is passion. I can sense it. As a coach, I'd love to have coached you. I can feel that passion just reeking out of your body. I love it.
I appreciate it. And I really thank you guys for, thinking of the family and wanting to take the time to even hear the story.
Well, thank you, Jack, for sharing your story with us today. I'm going to close with our listeners, and just hopefully you've all enjoyed the Booty family story as we've traveled from the birthplace of the Booty story. We've been in Shreveport. We've been in Miami, Florida, Newport Beach, California, and Norman, Oklahoma. And Austin and I trust that you have been blessed by the Booty family story, a story of family's generational legacy built on faith, family, and football with a kingdom vision. So we want to thank Johnny, Josh, Abram, JD, Jack, and General for sharing their family story with us on Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.